Hello, favorite humans. I'm so sorry we're not doing this live, but we'll try it this way and see what happens. And remember, I will be on Zoom at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. No 10 a.m. Zoom. I'll be hanging out at 4 o'clock. I'm here if you want to come in and ask questions, bounce back and forth. So we're going to split this video into a couple of different parts. We're talking about solving one-step equations. So we only got to do one thing to get our answer. One-step equations, we're going to have multiplication, and we're going to talk about division. So I think I'll split the videos so that you have one video talking about one-step equations with multiplication. The other one will talk about division. And then I'm thinking a third video with just a couple of practice problems. Make sure you watch all three of them before you go and take that pretest, okay? All right, so let's get started. In week 2, I have uploaded, and I would like for you to go find them. I have uploaded, can't give you the whole thing, there we go, these notes from Edgenuity. So it's pulled directly from the videos that you'll be learning from. If you'll go find them, then I will wait while you go find, I think it's called Multiplication and Division One-Step Equations. So go back over to Google Classroom, week 2, and I'll hang tight while you go find those real quick. Open them up in a different window. Oh wait, you could just pause the video, couldn't you? Okay, never mind. Pause here. I won't whistle and annoy you anymore. See, hence why I'm not a famous musician. Instead, I'm just a famous math teacher. Oh, how awesome. All right, pause here, go get that video, or go get that handout. You don't have to print it, but I'm old-fashioned. I like printed Word. Makes it easier when I have to go back and use those notes, wink, wink, when you're taking your pretest. How awesome. Notes, pretest. Might make those 10 questions a little softer. All right, so now that you have that, page 1 should look something like this. And I'm going to go through real quick and just kind of talk to you, but I want you to write these down as we look at page 1. The question we're going to work on in the lesson is how can you use inverse operations to solve equations? Inverse is a fancy-dancy math word that really just means let's do the opposite. It's kind of like, you know, next time mom says, hey, go make your bed, and you don't, you can say, Mom, I was using math. I did the inverse operation of what you asked me. And then you better run real quick and go make the bed. But inverse means the opposite. So if I say stop or do the inverse of stopping, then what do I want you to do? Go. Absolutely. If I go left, the inverse or the opposite of going left, here's my L, is right or that way. I hope that's right on your screen. It's right on my screen. So inverse just means the opposite. I say that to my husband a lot. You know, I did the inverse of what you asked me to do because, well, I like my way better. So anyways, that's what inverse is. Hint, hint. So there we go. Inverse, opposite. So we are going to be practicing inverse operations today, one step at a time. We'll do 2 steps later. We're going to conquer 1 steps today and using only right now multiplication and division. Okay? Some lesson goals that we're going to get out of these couple of videos will be to write and solve very small 1-step multiplication or division equations. So we're going to learn how to solve each one. We're going to talk about how to write a couple of them, and then we're going to practice. Okay? You use the multiplication property of equality to solve multiplication equations. Okay? So you use the hint, hint. You should be looking down here at your notes. Use the multiplication property of equality, which just means equality means this side has to be equal to this side. It has to be fair. I always say, you know what? If my parents are going to give me allowance and my sister allowance, then it needs to be equal. She wasn't that much younger, or isn't, not wasn't, she isn't that much younger than me. So we were close enough in age. We had equal allowances back when 10 cents was a lot of money. Yeah, that was our weekly allowance, 10 cents. So she got 10 cents as long as she did all her chores. I got my 10 cents on Friday as long as I did all of my chores. So that was equal, or we had equality in our allowances. Same thing with math. If I ask you to do the blank of equality, you're making sure both sides of the equation are fair or they are equal to one another. Okay? You use the division property, which we'll talk about in the next video, but you use the division property of equality to solve division equations. So when you think about that, we talked about inverse means opposite. So if I have a division equation, then I will be using the inverse. To solve a division equation, I'm going to have to multiply. To solve a multiplication equation, then I'm going to have to divide. I have to do the opposite before I can get the answer on both sides to be equal. I have to make sure this stuffy stuff over here equals to whatever answer I'm given. Okay? So a couple things one more time that you need to know. Balanced equation means that two expressions on either side of the equal sign end up being exactly the same thing. The multiplication property of equality means you're going to be doing something to both sides, some sort of multiplication to make it a balanced equation. Inverse operations, remember we said those are the opposite of doing it. So basically, think of it as, okay, I have multiplication over here. To undo that multiplication, I have to do the opposite. And the opposite of multiplication is division. When we get to addition and subtraction later on, if it's an addition problem, to undo adding, you simply subtract. Okay? That should give you your notes. And remember, you can pause this video at any time and go back and hear me being fabulous all over again. But that should give you your first page of notes. Hint, hint. You're going to love having this for the pretest. And remember, you have to take that pretest today. I will be looking for the score of your today being Tuesday, unless you watch this early. I will be looking at your pretest scores Tuesday night to see what do we still need to talk about for one-step equations when we get together on Wednesday. If we're all good, we've used our notes, we've plowed through, then we'll do a couple questions. Make sure you're comfortable with it. And again, not mastery. I'm giving you like one day to do this. We will practice these when we're face-to-face again, but you need to have seen them and had a chance to practice them before we come back face-to-face. All right, so let's move forward with this video. We're going to talk about using the inverse operations to solve a multiplication problem. So, for example, if you look at the second page of notes, oh no, that was gone fast. Oh wait, you can still pause the video and go back and look. So if you look, if I have 10a equals to 130. Let's write that down. I want you writing this on your notebook paper or following along on your notes. Someone's been in here borrowing pens. There we go. I want you following along either on your notes or writing this down on a separate sheet of paper. It's your choice. So let's take a peek at what we've got in our notes. And again, you can write it down on a plain old piece of paper. That works just as well. So I have a math problem that says 10a, which just means 10 times a, or 10 times what number, equals 130. Okay, I want you first, here's the original problem. Directly underneath that, I want you to rewrite the same problem because we're going to leave the original alone. It has to stay up here all by itself, no notes. It's the naked original problem. We're going to take the rewrite, and this is where we're going to play. So if I look at this side of the equation, 10 times A. The opposite of multiplication is what? Yep, division. Okay. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I have to be fair. I have to be equal. So if you look, that wasn't very pretty. There we go. If you look, now I'm going to take both sides and I'm going to divide this side by 10. And if I divide this side by 10, by golly, I got to be a fair person and I've got to divide this side by 10. All right, so all I want to see on step number 2 is that you rewrote the math problem. That is a must. And then I want you to show me divide. That's that little fraction bar right there. 10 on this side, 10 on this side. Don't write this any other way when you show me you're dividing by 10, because as you move into 8th grade math and then into algebra, if we're not practicing writing it this way, it's going to make life a little more complicated and you're going to have to relearn to rewrite. Okay? So on my next step, remember that you are using the division property, and we're reminding ourselves that this does not change the equation. So doing the opposite, that's an and, I promise. Doing the opposite does not change my equation. It just undoes what I did to the first side. All right, so I have, cover that up, there you go. So now our problem looks like this. And I say, okay, smarty pants, Miss Reynolds, I know that 10 divided by 10 leaves me with 1a hanging out here, because 10 divided by 10 is 1, but I can't do anything to a. He's stuck, okay? So a is left on this side, and then 130 divided by 10, and I end up with a on the left side, because I got rid of the 10s, I canceled it out basically. 10 divided by 10 is 1a, so I've got 1a hanging around right here. And 130 divided by 10, and I proved it over here, is 13. All right, so make sure you have that written down on your notes or on a plain old piece of notebook paper. Right now, this little thing, you don't worry about this equation right here. We're going to talk about that later on. And all they did was put that there to say, hey, guess what? You don't need the hey, guess what right now to help you with the math. You can always, 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 always go back and make sure you have math perfection by checking your answers. Now, me, I love to check my answers, because then, you know, Miss Reynolds, she doesn't like to be wrong. Oh my goodness. So then I can't be wrong. Can you check on your calculator? Sure. Sure. Remember, our goal for this summer bridge program is, can I understand the steps? Because Miss Reynolds knows I can do the mathy part, the add, subtract, multiply, and divide. I'm more worried about, can you do the steps? Step 1 is this, step 2 is this, so on and so forth, okay? So when you go back and you check your answer, the first thing you do is rewrite. There we go. Oh, now you can see me. Rewrite the original equation, okay? So don't try and make a mess up there at the top. Just start over. Here's my 10a equals 130. Then you set up here in your math problem that a has a value of 13. So we're going to plug that in for a. So now my math problem, a changes to 13, because that's what I'm pretty darn sure the answer is, but I'm going to make sure I'm perfectly darn sure. So now I could change that out, and I say 10 times 13 equals 130. Now, okay, that's probably true, but prove it. So here's my prove it, and I show you that with my calculator. 10 times 13 really is 130. And so this equation is true. I got it right. Now do me a favor, don't write this and then go, oh yeah, I know it's right. Check it. Okay, come out here, do the math, put 13 times 10 or 10 times 13, whichever makes you happy, and do your multiplication. All right, good as gold? Okay, of course I'm good as gold, Miss Reynolds, because I rock. All right. Go back and look over these notes. We're going to stop here for this video. This is video number 1. And I'm going to come back with video number 2. And we're going to talk about what happens if it's a division problem. All right? So make sure you've got your notes. Make sure you have all the good stuff and you filled out your notes. You should have now on page 1, which obviously I put in a very safe place. I guess it's 2 cents. There it is. So you should have on page 1 your vocabulary filled out. If not, I'll scan these and post them on Wednesday. Not so you have them to print out on Tuesday. Nice try. I heard that thought. It's a good thought. It's not going to happen. And then on page 2 only, we practiced multiplication. No, I keep changing colors on you. It's my blue light. Sorry. So we practiced with a multiplication problem. We did 10a. Remember, I do the inverse. I get rid of by doing the opposite. Like having that younger sibling or a cousin who is just stuck to your leg. And I want you to think of it this way. You are the letter. You are A because you are absolutely awesome. The 10 is your 10-year-old brother or sister stuck to your leg. And you think to yourself, Mom, please, I need some time by myself. How do I undo my sibling who is multiplied? The opposite of multiplying is dividing. What I do to one side, you're going to get so tired of hearing me say this all year, but you'll hear it in your sleep, in your nightmares, in Miss Reynolds' voice. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. I have to be fair. I play fair, I act fair, and I am fair. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. Then I should see down here where you wrote and made yourself a note, dividing each side by the same thing does not change my equation. You showed me your mathy stuff out here because you're awesome like that. And then down here at the very end, we checked it. Okay? We will eventually get to where you can just simply check it quickly in your head, check it on a calculator. But again, 40 blah, 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 years ago and years later, I still rewrite mine, especially if it's one that I'm like, ooh, it's decimally or it's fractiony. I'm going to go back and double check that. Okay, we're going to do one on our examples later on. And I went back and checked it. After I wrote the problem, I thought, better make sure I did this the way I'm supposed to do this. So I went back and checked it before I wrote it down as a practice problem. So you do the same for now so that we can get that practice going. All right? I will see you in just a few minutes. Go get a snack or a drink or dinner or whatever else you need. If you take a nap, no more than about 15 minutes, and come on back and we'll do division.